Welcome back for the last time to this factory, and today we're doing space science. Yeah, space science is the last science, and as you could probably see, and also I think I said in the last episode, space science doesn't actually unlock anything, it just optimizes what you already have. And so, today, we're gonna do that, I guess. And so, after stealing some stuff from the science setups to make the rocket silo that I'm going to need, I start planning space science out in Helmod. And it's gonna be expensive to put together. Like, over 10 belts of copper just for the wires. I decide for my first space science build this episode, I'm just gonna go for 60 science per minute. That being said, I will be getting up to 120 science per minute later, but for now I decided to do 60 SPM just to retain a little bit of sanity while building this. The first thing I make for space science is the rocket control units, and those are just pretty much a lot of circuits. Since they take the speed modules and the blue circuits, it's pretty much just a big circuit build that is kinda weird, but it works, and that's pretty much all that matters. And this is the part of the video where I get to let you all know that there's pretty much not going to be any game audio from this point on, which, since I have the volume on pretty low, probably won't make that big of a difference. But I just thought I'd let you know that there's pretty much not going to be any game audio, and I'll let you hear a little bit right here, just so you have a little guess as to why that might be.
Stuck with the one. Further distracted, I start setting up our...
Yeah, as it turns out, I messed up my OBS stuff, and it had been recording my desktop audio for pretty much this entire episode worth of recordings, and I did not notice until I was going through the recordings figuring out what I needed to talk about. And so pretty much all of our recordings have pollution from different YouTube videos and music I was watching, and so I'm pretty much just going to cut out all of the audio from the game, because that's pretty much the only option I have. Anyway, that slight error aside, the next thing I make, and the thing I was making while talking about that, was the low density structure. We've made this before, just plastic, copper, and steel together, not complicated, just a bit annoying. But honestly, here we don't even need too many assemblers. But this is the second ingredient for the rocket, so there's that done. The final ingredient of the rocket is the rocket fuel, which is the easiest of all three of them. You just need some light oil, turn half of it into solid fuel, and then put that solid fuel into an assembler with more light oil, and that makes rocket fuel. It's super simple. Genuinely, the most difficult part of this process was just routing the light oil down here from all the way at the top of the base. And with those three ingredients combined, we can technically make a rocket. But in order to actually get the science out of the rocket, we're also going to need a satellite, which takes some of the ingredients we've already made and also just some other annoying things that, I'm going to be honest, I got lazy and just had them all give to me, because I just could not be bothered to automate them at scale. And you may be saying, wow, Lucy, that makes it really hard to visualize this science, or, you know, kind of makes the build worse. And yes, it absolutely does. But A, I'm going to be building space science 2 more times this episode, and B, I do what I want. Or something, I don't know. I just didn't want to do it, I'm gonna be honest. And now the only thing I'm missing from this build is all of the modules, which are not inexpensive, but they're not terrible. Since they're being made in the mall, eventually it'll finish. I also stole a bunch of them from Purple Science, but like, don't tell anybody. And now I can just stand by and watch as the rocket gets built. And yeah, after not a terrible amount of waiting, it's done. But with that, it launches away and it leaves us with a little game over screen, which shows us basically just all the different things we've killed, which for some reason I've killed a lot more big spitters than everything else. But of course, that's not where this is going to end, because now it's time to optimize or something like that. Also, yeah, first space science at 53 hours in. Keep that in mind. But with that, I route the space science we've made up to the labs, tear out the old belts in favor of a sushi belt science build, mostly since my old build could not handle 7 sciences as input, and I take a moment to remember how to make a sushi belt, but I figure it out and begin on infinite researches, first starting with the worker robot speed since they literally can never be quick enough. And while I consider standing here to just watch the research go, I figure it's not that important since we're not actually getting any new research done here. Just optimizing worker robot speed, mining productivity, and a couple other things, like mostly damage upgrades. So instead of just standing there, I open up my Helmod screen and begin planning out all of the sciences again. This time planning them all out for using tier 3 productivity modules wherever they will fit, and also to use beacons, since I've never actually used beacons in Factorio before and would like to before they're changed in 2.0, since this is pretty much my last opportunity to use a 12 beacon assembler and it actually be optimal. And after planning them out, I head over to start making test models for them. Basically just making the blueprints for them, since these are going to get their own quote-unquote base. Red science is still as simple as could possibly be. In fact, using beacons and modules, it's just 2 assemblers to get 120 science per minute out of it. Green science is also pretty easy, and also even more compact than it was before. Just 2 assemblers for the science itself, even though we're building for 120 science per minute, apparently this is all we'll need. And pretty much all of the sciences are like this. Military, blue, purple, yellow, even space science are pretty simple, all things considered. Though space science and yellow science are still a bit complicated. With modules and beacons, they're actually much smaller and take a lot less input material, so they can overall be quote-unquote simpler, I guess. Forgetting to record for a bit and also listening to music this time instead of Factorio videos, that's a switch up. But I was working on a module build, so nothing terribly exciting. It's pretty much just a really big circuit build, kinda like the rocket control unit builds. But I'm building this because these science builds that I'm going to be making, the one with the beacons, take a lot of modules, so just setting this up in the old base and having it passively produce some will help me not have to wait around as much. And while working on that, we actually have a full-out power outage, which was very surprising to me that that happened. But as it turns out, it was just because the processing of the wasted fuel couldn't happen because we backed up on bad uranium. So it's nothing really that important. It was just mostly a nuisance. But anyway, back to the modules. One of the best things about module builds in general is that you can just copy and paste them and swap out the module recipes to get different modules. This second one that I'm making is for speed modules because we're going to need a lot of those. In fact, we're going to need more of those than we need productivity modules, so I probably should have built that one first, but I didn't. But it's probably fine. And it's around this time that I decide to cut all of the resources off from the science builds here, because we're not really going to be using them anymore. We're going to be transferring over to the science builds that I'm about to make, and there's not a whole lot more research that I need to do here anyway, and so turning them off now will just make the modules build a little bit faster, and I won't have to worry about it as much. Not long after that, I also just decide to have the robots clear out the old sciences because we're not using them. They don't even have resources going into them anymore. So might as well just fully remove them. Clearly following the series of deconstruction, I also have the robots get rid of our second copper mine since I'm pretty much gonna be using this patch for the new base, and we don't need that much in the current base anymore since we're just making modules. And then it's new Spidertron time! This one will hold a lot of base building materials, and it's named Vilkillian since they told me to use modules, and I happen to be doing that a lot now. Curious. But with that spider setup, I start building the iron mines for the new base. It's also where the steel and iron forges were going to be, because I decide to have all of the furnaces next to their respective ore patches, and then I'll just use belts to ship them over to what's effectively going to be the next bus. Then I just do the rest of the resources. Copper mine and forges, stone mines and stone brick forges, coal mine and an oil refinery, using coal liquefaction as it's more stable in my experience and easier to find out what's wrong with it if it isn't, and route the coal and oils down to the bus along with everything else. And then finishing off by setting up plastic, sulfur, lube, and sulfuric acid down next to the bus and add them to it. But with the bus now finished, I can now set up all of the different sciences. Since I already have the blueprints for them, I can just paste them down underneath the bus and route all the materials into them. And I pretty quickly paste everything from red science to space science down, though I am, as you can probably imagine, still quite low on all the modules I'm gonna need. But while I may have forgotten to record it, I did set up a better module build at some point in the base, and I just have to stand there for a bit to wait to get all the modules together. After setting in all of the modules and doing some slight maintenance, since some of them were built a little weird, I just can watch them go, and they work great. Relatively small builds for a pretty good amount of science, and I can just finish them up and give them their own labs. And yeah, this relatively small area makes as much science, in fact a little bit more, than our old base did. That being said, I don't really know how I feel about them. They work great, they're super efficient, but I find these super optimized beaconed builds a little bit boring, if I'm gonna be honest. They're just a little too regular, I guess. I don't know. It might just be me, but I think the chaoticness of a belt base is part of the charm of a factory, and the beacons kind of force you to build in almost a grid shape that I don't super care for. And so, even though that is the second base of, all the sciences, that's probably not going to be the last one. As you can probably imagine, I was not super pleased with the outcome of that one. Not because it didn't work, just because I didn't vibe with it. And so what now? More Helmod planning. This time, another 120 science per minute base, but this time I'm going to very much limit the amount of beacons I use, only using it in very niche areas, and also still using tier 3 modules wherever I can. And I mean wherever. If it can accept a productivity 3 module, it's getting it, and if it cannot take productivity 3s, but it can take speed 3s, it's getting it even if it really doesn't need it. In other words, I'm making another 120 science per minute base build, but this time it's going to be a little bit less optimal and substantially dumber. Since last base got one, this base gets another new spider too. This one is Minty Cat 6529, and they're holding productivity modules. That's pretty much it, because frankly I'm going to need so many of them for this build. But back to the base, you may have noticed when I opened the Helmod screen for a little bit that I had planned each science down to the mines. This is because I have decided that every single mine, or every single science, will have its own mines and its own furnaces. No bus. Everything gets its own things. Now, I could say that I did this for consistency or for some other smart reason, but I'm going to be 100% honest, I just thought it would be funny, and I wanted to put as many things in this one little corner as I could physically put there. As it turns out, with how I'm building this one, the red science only needs one mine for iron and one mine for copper, which is a lot less than I expected, but it's also kinda funny. It does need 7 total furnaces and 17 total assembling machines though. This build seems pretty normal, besides for the ore belts being the only thing that actually move long distance. Next up is green science, which also only needs 1 drill in copper, but it does need 3 drills of iron, 15 total furnaces, and 26 total assembling machines. And I make this one a bit more uniquely shaped, I'll say. Next up is military science, which takes about 14 drills, 46 furnaces, and 20 assemblers, and this one is even wackier, which I love. Then it's on to blue science, which takes 8 drills, 38-ish furnaces, about 11 chemical plants, and about 85 assemblers, and this one's incredibly cursed and wraps around the bottom of all the other 3, and yeah, it's perfect. Next up is purple science, which takes about 35 drills, about 16 chem plants, about 57 furnaces, and about 50 assemblers. And this is the one where I start building from end to beginning, because my mind is collapsing into insanity. Next up is yellow science, which takes about 25 drills, about 140 furnaces, about 26 chemical plants, and about 103 assemblers, and this fucker is terrible and bent, and I love it. Yeah, you get the drill at this point. Next one is space science, again, because, you know, we've done it 2 times already this episode, but we're doing it again. And I will read exactly what I wrote in my notes. This took 45 drills, 223 furnaces, 83 furnaces, and 323 assemblers. One of those furnaces ones is probably meant to say chemical plants, but it doesn't. I try and fill the empty space, and it is blasphemously stupid, but it works. And that's what matters. And of course, I'm short literal hundreds of tier 3 modules, so I end up standing around for, I'm pretty sure, actual hours waiting for modules to build up so I can actually finish it. But after that, it's finished. And it's great. Except for that it's really dumb and bad, but it's great, because look at it. It's wonderful. And it's probably the best thing I've ever made in this game. And yes, that is the exact noise I make every time I seriously mess up a voice line, but anyway, that's not important. New spider time. This one's Olikli 000, and they hold weapons. Yeah, they're going to be blowing spiders up in the background, along with their, like, 13 clones, because I had a lot more Spidertrons in the box than I thought I did. But that's pretty much the end of the episode. Yeah, at some point I was considering moving on and making like a bigger base, and like maybe even making an 1000 SPM base at the end of the series, but I figured that can wait. Since we're running so close to the release of Space Age, I figured I would just wait until then, and then I would make a bigger base then. And therefore I could maybe try a little bit better at explaining some of these builds, because I know in a lot of the earlier episodes I did not do the best at explaining what I was doing. And even nowadays, I haven't done the greatest at explaining things, even though I am trying. I'm kinda hoping that even people without previous Factorio knowledge can kind of understand what's going on from these videos. But explaining things that are these like ingrained in me, I guess, is kinda difficult as it turns out. You may have noticed that I didn't really take a lot of time to explain the module base, or beaconed base I guess would be a more accurate way of saying it, and the chaos spaghetti knot that I made. And that's mostly because they weren't like super the main point. I just kind of wanted to show that you don't have to have these massive rail bases or like city blocks or main buses. You can kind of just play the game however you want. As long as you're having fun, that's the main goal. And I feel like some newcomers don't realize that. I've seen a lot of posts about people being intimidated to start playing because they are expecting to have to build these like massive 1,000 science per minute bases, and it's really just not necessary. A 60 science per minute base is honestly all you would really need. It just might take a little bit to research some of the things you want. Yeah, so basically I just wanted to make some sillier bases and less serious ones. The module or beaconed base is technically the most optimal of them, but like I said, it's not my preference, so you don't have to do that. Even though it's optimal, you can kind of just build however you want, and that's just kind of your design to make. You don't gotta make these. It doesn't need to be optimal, is what I'm trying to say. Just build what you want to build. One last thing before I go. Remember a little while ago in this video when I said to remember the time that I got my first space science? Well, that's because we're currently in the 100-hour mark, which is a little bit of an upgrade in time since then, and I just thought that was curious considering I didn't actually do all that much, and just thought I'd point it out. But anyway, I think that's enough of me rambling about what the design philosophy of this game is, or whatever it is I'm talking about. I'm not really sure. But, yeah, just trying to say, play the game how you want to play it, and don't feel like you have to build these massive bases. But if you want to build those massive bases, you can. But for now, that's probably gonna be it from me today. And I'll probably be back when Space Age comes out, and I'm probably gonna play that. But until then, we'll see what I do, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.